Hey, Indian Creek 8th grade students, it's Professor Blazek, and I'm here today with our daily e-learning lesson. It is Monday, May 11th. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Wasn't the greatest weather, at least out by me, and I know yesterday was not good, really. It seemed like anywhere. But I hope everyone had a good weekend, a good Mother's Day, that you were able to celebrate a little bit with your family. And, we're right down to the end of the school year. I mean, we have this week and then 3 days next week, and then that's it. So we're really in the home stretch. So I hope that you're ready to join me in making sure that we get all the way across that finish line, and then just making sure that we take those final steps to be ready for your transition into high school. So let's jump into our lesson for today. So for our review, we had 37 out of 51 students who submitted Friday's attendance. I think that date might be wrong. I do believe that Friday was actually the 8th. My fault for forgetting to change that. Basically what we've been seeing on Friday, a little bit lower than the rest of the week, but still, 2/3 of the students submitting it, which was great to see. We're up to 22 people who have turned in their allegory chart for Animal Farm, and 30 out of 51 people who have turned in their Chapter 10 response. So those of you who have turned those things in, especially if you've turned both in, thank you very much. That's really, really helpful for me, just because the sooner I get them all in, the sooner things can get uploaded into the grade book, and the sooner you can see your final grades for fourth quarter. If you have not finished one or both of those, just please make sure to get them in. We talked about all the characters on the allegory chart throughout the Animal Farm unit. So if you need to go back and review some of our daily e-learning lessons on YouTube, you can, because all of that information will be in there as well. And then I had talked about the Chapter 10 response on Friday. I'll touch on it briefly again today, just in case there are some of you who are still looking for additional help on that. And then today, our class plan, pretty straightforward. We'll talk about the Google form for today. We will just briefly touch on the Chapter 10 response. We'll go over the assignment that you have for the next couple of days in language arts, kind of your final Animal Farm assignment. We'll just review the Decades Project for Social Studies. And then there is actually one more thing that I will talk about, which is the final class motto vote. That was sent out in the social studies classroom, but I'll touch on it here just to clarify the instructions and everything. So should be relatively short lesson, and I'll stop, rambling on and continue moving forward. So Friday's journal prompt was asking you to come up with a new holiday. Some of the examples that people gave, I'm pretty sure are already holidays, but I'll take that as you're just looking for a wider celebration of them, which it's totally fine. I'll be honest, I feel like there's pretty much a holiday for anything. Any interest, job, whatever the case may be. So no big deal at all if you know that the holiday you talked about was one that's already been created. So I combined some of these together if they were similar. So we had National Gaming Day, and then someone else wanted Video Game Day. We had No Work Day / No School Day. I thought, there are plenty of days where you don't have school, including the whole summer. And No Work Day, there is already Labor Day. But I totally understand the want to give people a day off work, a day off school, to get to enjoy that break, because everybody looks forward to those 3-day weekends. Family Day, I thought was good. We had National Kid or National Children Day. We had a couple people who want parents to have a day to celebrate their kids and buy them presents. I feel like most parents would say that's pretty much every day. But that was a repeated option that people were putting in. Step Parents Day, I thought was good. People who don't always get as much credit or as much appreciation as they probably should. National Fun Day. Sunset Appreciation Day, I thought was a cool idea. Everyone go outside, enjoy a nice sunset. Conquer Your Fear Day, I thought was really great. It It's something that I feel like a lot of people would like to do, but maybe don't have the time or don't have the will to do it. And so maybe if it was an actual holiday where you took the time to try and conquer fear, I think that would be great. Celebration of Life Day, just a day to take to enjoy life and appreciate the fact that you are alive and all the good things, I feel like would be excellent. Especially, in a time like this where there are a lot of people who are stressed out and probably just need that reminder of all of the good things going on. National Barbecue Day would be delicious. Hospital Workers Day, absolutely, after everything we're going through in this time. National Dessert Week, I thought was funny because who wants just one day for desserts? You got to have a whole week. No Electronics Day would be an interesting one just to see how people coped with that. And maybe, hopefully, in some cases, would lead to additional no or minimal electronics. First Amendment Day, just a day to appreciate some of the freedoms that we have. National Elders Day, kind of like Grandparents' Day, which is a holiday, but I think is one that could be a little bit more widely celebrated. And then Harvey Harvest/Harvest Day, I think would be great, especially in the agricultural communities, but across the country as well, to appreciate those people who are growing all of the food that we eat, because I think that that's something that's sometimes forgotten about. So those were the most of the holidays that were submitted. So thank you to everyone for that, and really lots of good and interesting ideas here. So that being said, let's jump into today's journal and form. There is our end of year plans, just as a reminder. Only 2 parts today. We will talk about the Google slide that's just in there, just as your final assignment for relating the animal farm, and then your attendance response. There will be an optional final kind of big vocab quiz that I will probably post, I would think maybe on Wednesday, that you'll have basically a week to take if you would like it. It'll be a big one, but it will also then carry that much more weight in the final grade book for those people who would like to do it. It'll, basically be exactly what it sounds like, all of the vocab word roots in one gigantic quizzes. So if you want to be reviewing any of those, that'll be a great opportunity for those of you who have been participating in these additional units, but really in all the units in general, and the chance to get a nice bump to your grade just in time for the end of the year. Our attendance responses this week, we're going to be doing, I always like to do some reflection type journals at the end of the school year. Since we're down to our last week or so, that's what we will really be focusing on. And so for today, your prompt is, what is your favorite memory from your 8th grade year? Hopefully we won't have people saying school getting canceled and not having to be in class, because that obviously would be my least favorite part. But just your favorite memory could be, a specific incident, a specific class, a specific activity, just something funny that happened. But your favorite memory from your 8th grade school year, and then why. So if you don't feel comfortable going into a ton of detail, you don't have to. But that is the journal prompt for today, your favorite memory. So to talk about just briefly the Chapter 10 writing response, we talked on Friday about this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But again, just a reminder, we said that revolution, the word, has 2 different meanings. The sudden change in political power where people are revolting or fighting back against their government. And it also means a complete turn, in the sense that, you go through a revolution and then you end up back where you began. And so this writing response asked you to talk about which of these definitions you feel like better describes the story and why. And then I just wanted to remind people that you can talk about both, just as long as you reference what parts of the story you feel like relate to each of the definitions. So if you want to talk about just one as like an overall, you feel like this relates to the story better, that's totally fine. If you want to talk about both because you feel they both come into play, that's totally fine as well. So again, just make sure you're referring to events in the story, and then please get that submitted once you are done with it. All right, so then for the assignment for the next couple of days in language arts, it is this activity right here. And actually, sorry, I should have this in full screen. That's my fault. But it is an Animal Farm character slide. And of course, there we go. So this is similar to what we would do for our final project, but obviously kind of cut down just because everything's being cut down with e-learning. But you're going to choose one of the characters from Animal Farm, and you are going to create a Google slide that is all about him or her. You need to include 4 things. You need to include the character's name and then just a reference to the type of animal. You don't have to go into specifics, but just Boxer is a horse, Napoleon is a pig, or if you want to say a Berkshire boar, that's totally fine as well. You want to have a brief description of the character. You don't need to go into too much detail, but it should be more than 1 sentence long, especially for those characters who are playing throughout most of the book. Their real life allegory, so just a reference to this character is an allegory for this person or this group. That's all on your allegory chart. So if you need to unsubmit it just to review it, you can. Hopefully most people will just remember that off the top of their head. And then you want 3 important quotes that are either said by or about your character from the story. So they don't need to. So actually, I see that Emily just asked, what do you do if your character does not talk 3 times? When I say a quote, I mean like something you're quoting word for word from the story. So it could be something that that George Orwell just wrote about your character, something they did or how they looked. But you're quoting it, you're copying it word for word. So you're not summarizing, you're copying and pasting from the story 3 things either about your character or said by your character. So if you're doing Squealer and you just want to do 3 of the kind of ridiculously, obviously false speeches that he talks about, you can do that. If, however, you have a character who doesn't talk as much or is someone who repeats the same things over and over, you can just go with descriptions of your character instead. And you'll see, hopefully, from the example slide that I have, what that means, and it'll clarify how to do that. So I did give you an example slide of Mr. Jones, and so I included a picture. You can see here on the right-hand side that Mr. Jones is Tsar Nicholas II, and so there is the allegory. Here in the middle, in the bigger text, is my description of him, that he's the human owner of Manor Farm. He's irresponsible. He's a big drinker. This is what leads to his animals breaking out and rebelling. And then just the fact that he later leads a group of men to try and take the farm back. He's not successful. And then at the end of the book, it is said that he later dies in what's called an inebriate's home, which is like a home for people with alcoholism who are suffering from that. So you have the brief description. You have his name. It's mentioned that he's a human. Here is his allegory. And then the 3 quotes, none of these are actually said by Mr. Jones because he doesn't actually speak in the story. So these are just all about him. So the first one here in the top and in the middle is about him hearing the ruckus of the animals during Old Major's speech and then going out and shooting into the side of the barn because he thinks that there's a fox. In the bottom left here just talks about how he used to be a decent farmer, but now because he had lost money, because he was drinking more, he had kind of fallen into bad habits. And then this last one, which it doesn't look like my head's really blocking, is the one about how he had gone into Willingdon and had way too much to drink and then came back and promptly fell asleep. And this is what would eventually lead to the animals rebelling. So those are 3 things that are said about him that I put in quotes just to show that they are taken word for word from the story, but they are not actually said by him. So quotes just means you're quoting it from the story. So then I put a blank slide here. Obviously, you can get into as much in terms of creativity as you would like. I mean, I would say at least try to mix up your colors, your fonts, add a picture if you would like to. But that is obviously the layout is something that you can change based on how you would like to submit it. So if you want to make the background black, if you want to make all your text green, however you want to do it, that is totally fine. All right. And you're going to have today and tomorrow to work on that. And then I see that Paige just asked, does the description have to be a certain amount of sentences? I wouldn't say sentences specifically. I would just go for trying to at least show your character throughout the story. You don't have to show every single event, but at least just kind of major changes moving forward throughout the story. So like, for example, Mr. Jones obviously plays in at the beginning, and then the battle where he comes in to try to take the farm back, and then I just mentioned what happens to him at the end. So some of the characters like Napoleon or like Boxer might take a little bit more, but don't feel like you have to cover every important event. So, for example, like Napoleon, you could talk about how he and Snowball are kind of the two pigs who are fighting for control of the farm. He secretly trains these dogs who chase Snowball off. That's how he's able to take power. And then throughout the rest of the story, he uses Squealer and the other animals fear the dogs to gain power for himself. And then he ultimately enters into an agreement with the other farmers, the other human farmers. And by the end of the story, he has essentially become no different than Mr. Jones. So I don't know exactly how many sentences that would be that I just said, but I feel like, going for a decent paragraph, 4 or 5 would be a good goal at a minimum. So try and cover your character somewhat throughout the story, but don't feel like you have to cover every single event related to them. And then if you finish early and you want to do more than one character, you absolutely can. That is an option that you have. It's not a requirement. But if you get through and say you do Squealer, and then you think, I'd also really like to do Benjamin, you can do that as well. All right. So if you have any other questions, you can put them up in the chat as long as this video is running. Shoot me an email, comment on Google Classroom, anything at all that you would like. But this is the quote unquote final assignment for Animal Farm. All right. So then just a reminder for social studies that we are still working on our decades project for this week. You should be at the point where you are actually in the creating phase of your project. Some of you might have been doing that as you researched, but if you were someone who said, I'm going to do half the time researching, half the time creating, this would be when you want to be really transitioning into making your slides. And again, pictures, different fonts, things like that, that is totally up to you. But, I would say, obviously, if you can come up with things that relate to your decade, that would be that much better. All right. But we have this week to be working on those. So just please use your social studies work time to continue working on those, and email myself, Ms. Watson, Mr. Roush, if you have any questions working on your project. All right. I'm really excited to see what some people have come up with for these, because I have gotten a decent amount of emails, and it seems like some people are really diving deep into these and wanting to do a good job. So I'm excited to see what everyone is able to come up with. All right, and then just as a final note, in the social studies classroom, there is a final vote on your class motto. Out of the, I think it was 18 or 19 original options, these were the top 5. I want to say all of these got at least maybe 12 votes. And then I want to say there was a decent jump down to like the next highest one only got 9. So, it was kind of hard to know where to cut off. Do you only do two, top three? But it felt like from here, I want to say the highest one had 16 or 17 and then down into 12. So I felt like those were close enough. And so out of these five, you can choose up to two. So if you only have one that you really like, just vote for that one. It's not required that you vote for two. It's just that out of five, if you would like to vote for more than one, there's one that you really like and then another one that's pretty close or you can't decide, you can vote for two. All right, so the five finalists we had are, it's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. Then we have our lives are before us, our pasts are behind us, but our memories are forever within us. We have often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else, really relating to graduation there. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I just realized that I copy and pasted that with a typo in it. So I apologize. I just copy and pasted from the suggestions. I should have caught that. That's my fault. And then finally, isn't it funny how day by day nothing changes, but when you look back, everything is different. So pick your top two, the ones that you like the best. Up to two, you can only choose one if you would like. And please have these submitted by Wednesday, and then that will be how we decide on the final class motto. All right. And of course, again, email me with any questions that you have relating to this. And just make sure you get that in by Wednesday. All right, so class motto form, and then decades project in social studies, language arts, you have your form, and then just be working on your Animal Farm slide. Obviously, if you want to be working on your Genius Hour, you can do that, but the last 5 or 6 class periods are all going to be committed to strictly finishing up Genius Hour as well. All right. Otherwise, any questions you have, email me, and I will do my best to answer those for you to help put you on the right path, or just any other concerns or questions that you have in general. All right. I hope, like I said at the beginning of the video, I hope everyone had a great weekend. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and I'm hoping that we get some good news to get us out of our quarantine and move into our next phase as soon as possible. All right, everyone have a great rest of your day, and I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, this is Professor Blazek signing off.